Are you ready for Chapter 23? Here we are at the Caribou Public Library for our chapter book story time. I'm Miss Erin, and we're reading Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 23 is titled Aunt March Settles the Question. Like bees swarming after their queen, mother and daughters hovered about Mr. March the next day, neglecting everything to look at, wait upon, and listen to the new invalid, who was in a fair way to be killed by kindness. As he sat propped up in the big chair by Beth's sofa, with the other three close by, and Hannah popping in her head now and then, to peep at the dear man, nothing seemed needed to complete their happiness. But something was needed, and the elder ones felt it, though none confessed the fact. And Mr. and Mrs. March looked at one another with an anxious expression as their eyes followed Meg. Jo had sudden fits of sobriety, and was seen to shake her fist at Mr. Brooke's umbrella, which had been left in the hall. Meg was absent-minded, shy, and silent, started when the bell rang, and colored when John's name was mentioned. Amy said, "Everyone seemed waiting for something, and couldn't settle down, which was strange since father was safe at home." And Beth innocently wondered why the neighbors didn't run over as usual. Laurie went by in the afternoon, and seeing Meg at the window, seemed suddenly possessed with a melodramatic fit, for he fell down upon one knee in the snow, beat his breast, tore his hair, and clasped his hands imploringly, as if begging some boon. And when Meg told him to behave himself and go away, he wrung imaginary tears out of his handkerchief and staggered round the corner, as if in utter despair. What does the goose mean?" said Meg, laughing and trying to look unconscious. "He's showing you how your John will go on by and by. Touching, isn't it?" answered Jo scornfully. "Don't say my John. It isn't proper or true." But Meg's voice lingered over the words as if they sounded pleasant to her. "Please don't plague me, Jo. I've told you I don't care much about him, and there isn't to be anything said, but we are all to be friendly and go on as before." "We can't, for something has been said, and Laurie's mischief has spoiled you for me. I see it, and so does Mother. You are not like your old self a bit, and seem ever so far away from me. I don't mean to plague you, and will bear it like a man, but I do wish it was all settled. I hate to wait, so if you mean ever to do it, make haste and have it over quick," said Jo pettishly. "I can't say or do anything until he speaks, and he won't, because Father said I was too young," began Meg, bending over her work with a queer little smile, which suggested that she did not quite agree with her father on that point. "If he did speak, you wouldn't know what to say, and would cry or blush, or let him have his own way instead of giving a good decided no." "I'm not so silly and weak as you think. I know just what I'd say, for I've planned it all, so I needn't be taken unawares. There's no knowing what may happen, and I wished to be prepared." Jo couldn't help smiling at the important air which Meg had unconsciously assumed, and which was as becoming as the pretty color varying in her cheeks. "Would you mind telling me what you'd say?" asked Jo more respectfully. "Not at all. You're 16 now, quite old enough to be my confidant, and my experience will be useful to you by and by, perhaps in your own affairs of this sort." "Don't mean to have any. It's fun to watch other people philander, but I should feel like a fool doing it myself," said Jo, looking alarmed at the thought. "I guess not, if you've liked anyone very much and he liked you." Meg spoke as if to herself, and glanced out at the lane where she had often seen lovers walking together in the summer twilight. "I thought you were going to tell me your speech to that man," said Jo, rudely shortening her sister's little reverie. "Oh, I shall merely say, quite calmly and decidedly, 'Thank you, Mr. Brooke. You are very kind, but I agree with Father that I am too young to enter into any engagement at present. So please say no more, but let us be friends as we were.'" "That's stiff and cool enough. Don't believe you'll ever say it. I know he won't be satisfied if you do. If he goes on like the rejected lover in books, you'll give in rather than hurt his feelings." "No, I won't. I shall tell him I've made up my mind and shall walk out of the room with dignity." Meg rose as she spoke, and was just going to rehearse the dignified exit, when a step in the hall made her fly into her seat and began to sew as if her life depended on finishing that particular seam in a given time. Jo smothered a laugh at the sudden change, and when someone gave a modest tap, opening the door with a grim aspect, which was anything but hospitable. "Good afternoon. I came to get my umbrella, that is, to see how your father finds himself today," said Mr. Brooke, getting a trifle confused, as his eye went from one telltale face to the other. "It's very well. He's in the rack. I'll get him, and I'll tell it you are here." And having jumbled her father and the umbrella well together in her reply, Jo slipped out of the room to give Meg a chance to make her speech and to air her dignity. But the instant she vanished, Meg began to sidle toward the door, murmuring, "Mother will like to see you. Pray sit down. I'll call her." "Don't go. Are you afraid of me, Margaret?" And Mr. Brooke looked so hurt that Meg thought she must have done something very rude. She blushed up to the little curls in her forehead, for he had never called her Margaret before, and she was surprised to find how natural and sweet it seemed to hear him say it. Anxious to appear friendly and at her ease, she put out her hand with a confiding gesture and said gratefully, "How can I be afraid when you have been so kind to Father? I only wish I could thank you for it." "Shall I tell you how?" asked Mr. Brooke, holding the small hand fast in both of his big ones, and looking down at Meg with so much love in his brown eyes that her heart began to flutter, and she both longed to run away and to stop and listen. "Oh, no, please don't. I'd rather not," she said, trying to withdraw her hand and looking frightened in spite of her denial. "I won't trouble you. I only want to know if you care for me a little, Meg. I love you so much, dear," added Mr. Brooke tenderly. This was the moment for the calm, proper speech. But Meg didn't make it, for she forgot every word of it, hung her head, and answered, "I don't know," so softly that John had to stoop down to catch the foolish little reply. He seemed to think it was worth the trouble, for he smiled to himself as if quite satisfied, pressed the plump hand gratefully, and said, in his most persuasive tone, "Will you try and find out? I want to know so much, for I can't go to work with any heart until I learn whether I am to have my reward in the end or not." "I'm too young," faltered Meg, wondering why she was so flustered, and yet rather enjoying it. "I'll wait, and in the meantime, you could be learning to like me. Would it be a very hard lesson, dear?" "Not if I choose to learn it, but please choose to learn, Meg. I love to teach, and this is easier than German," broke in John, getting possession of the other hand so that she had no way of hiding her face, and he bent to look at it. His tone was properly beseeching, but stealing a shy look at him, Meg saw that his eyes were merry as well as tender, and that he wore the satisfied smile of one who had no doubt of his success. This nettled her. Annie Moffat's foolish lessons in coquetry came to her mind, and the power of love, which sleeps in the bosoms of the best of little women, woke up all of a sudden and took possession of her. She felt excited and strange, and not knowing what else to do, followed a capricious impulse, and withdrawing her hands, said petulantly, "I don't choose. Please go away and let me be." Poor Mr. Brooke looked as if his lovely castle in the air was tumbling about his ears, for he had never seen Meg in such a mood before, and it rather bewildered him. "Do you really mean that?" he asked anxiously, following her as she walked away. "Yes, I do. I don't want to be worried about such things. Father says I needn't. It's too soon, and I'd rather not." "Mayn't I hope you'll change your mind by and by? I'll wait and say nothing until you have had more time. Don't play with me, Meg. I don't think that of you." "Don't think of me at all. I'd rather you wouldn't," said Meg, taking a naughty satisfaction in trying her lover's patience and her own power. He was grave and pale now, and looked decidedly more like the novel heroes whom she admired. But he neither slapped his forehead nor tramped about the room as they did. He just stood looking at her so wistfully, so tenderly, that she found her heart relenting in spite of her. What would have happened next, I cannot say, if Aunt March had not come hobbling in, at this interesting minute. And that's where we have to stop today, for this chapter is quite lengthy, and we will continue it next time. Bye for now.